At the Rowita Awards, you brought Debbie McDade because of her background and her connection with St. Augustine, Lincolnville, and music. How did you find out about Debbie McDade in the first place?
Well, I was trying to think today, and I have known Debbie for a quarter century or more. She actually moved back to St. Augustine in the 1970s, just about the time I first moved here. So our paths crossed many times, and I knew her long before I knew her singing history, and that she had made records and movies and performed around the world and been a soloist with major bands. So it was a learning process all the way along. It still is. Every time I talk to her, I learn something new.
So a classic theater now is in the throes of doing a musical with Debbie's music called Sweet Emmeline. And we will be doing it Lincolnville in the Excelsior School upstairs, now the Lincolnville Center for the Arts. Tell us about her music, when you discovered it and listening to it and your favorite pieces.
I have to tell you, I have a tin ear for music. A conversation between me and Debbie is always hilarious because she assumes that I know all these things and I absolutely do not know them. And I sit there with a blank look on my face, So in that sense, it's unfortunate. But for years, my goal was to get Debbie to sing publicly in St. Augustine. And finally, after annoying her for 20 years or so, we were at a meeting once, and afterwards she said, "I will sing at your wedding." And I wasn't married at the time. I said, "Debbie, I might get married just to hear you sing." And she said, "You'll live through hell if you do."
Bless her heart. Okay, now you've researched her music. How much have you found out about Debbie?
Well, when you find out about Debbie, you have to look under several names. She was born Emmeline Maltsby, and when she went to New York in the 1940s, that was not considered a marketable singing name. So first her first record came out in the early 1950s by Tuxedo Records under the name of Debbie Morris. And then later, she said Louis Armstrong told her that wasn't quite right. So she kept the Debbie because Debbie Reynolds was popular at the time. And then Roger Moore was playing James Bond, so that's where the Moore came from. So her next record came out as Debbie Moore. And she spells Debbie differently than the other people did. I once asked her why, and she said, "They just did that." So too bad for they.
Okay, the musical is going to be in Lincolnville, and you've listened to her music now. So what are your thoughts on it now and the fact that we will expose her music to the Lincolnville area where she grew up?
I think it's wonderful. I once asked her, how did she get her start in music? She said she used to put on shows in the neighborhood underneath the grape arbor of her family home on Bravo Street. And she used to listen to, as Carrie Johnson did, used to listen to the music on the radio. And she used to listen to the choir at Trinity Methodist Church on Bridge Street. So all of those things are kind of coming back together.
What do you think about her jazz? I mean, it is unusual, and that's one of the reasons she was so successful in New York. She had a different sound.
A different sound, and she was famous for her blues whistling, and she learned the whistling here, too. So, that's something that she carried with her. But again, I'm more of a historian than a jazz critic, and I ask Debbie questions about people she knew there. She knew W.C. Handy, the father of the blues, and she once told me that he was blind in his later years, but he still knew it was Debbie because he could recognize her voice. And somebody who became a kind of agent to promote aspiring young black singers in those days was a man named Fritz Pollard, who was in the Football Hall of Fame. First he had a famous career as a kind of the Jackie Robinson of professional football, and then he became an agent who helped the careers of many black singers in New York. So I'm always fascinated by these things.
And if you had to appear in a commercial on television to promote Sweet Emmeline, the musical history of Debbie McDade, what would you say to anybody out there to get them to come see it?
You know, the history of music is filled with revivals, with people who have been forgotten over a period of time and then remembered while they're still here to appreciate it. I think Alberta Hunter is somebody just like that, and I've always thought that Debbie had a very close parallel to that. I mean, the arc of her life, from growing up in Lincolnville during the Depression and going off to New York, you know, at the end of World War II, and making her way through great determination, and then coming back to St. Augustine to look after her aging and ailing mother, and having to go to work as a maid because St. Augustine in those days was a no-opportunity society. I think that, you know, what a wonderful thing that in recent years she has come to be honored by the Lincolnville Museum, by the Rowita Award from the Cultural Council, and now by the play that's going to come out. I think that's just wonderful, and let's make sure we do it while Debbie is still here to appreciate it.
I don't even have to telephone.